Okay, assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name's Aisha Siddiqui, and I am with EducationUSA in Lahore. I am going to take you through a quick presentation about EducationUSA, who we are, what we do, before handing it over to Catherine. Kat is here from George Washington University, and we're so thrilled to have her. She comes with immense knowledge and over 10 years in international higher ed. So this is looking to be a very fruitful session. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box rather than the chat. If you can, it'll help us keep track of them. And Kat will introduce herself more thoroughly when I hand it over to her. But once again, thank you so much for being here, Kat. And I'll just hand it over to you in 2 minutes. Okay, what is EducationUSA? I think a lot of you who are here already know what we do, but for those of you that don't, we're essentially a network of advising centers scattered across the globe. And in Pakistan, we have our offices in Lahore, Islamabad, and Karachi. Now, we are the official source on anything to do with higher ed in the US. There are a lot of agents out there, especially in Lahore, and they're not under the umbrella of the Department of State. So if you want authentic information, please get in touch with us. Even though we're just in these 3 cities, it does not mean that you can't reach out to us if you're somewhere else in the country. No matter where you are, we are just an email away. And it is our job to help you figure out where to apply, how to put your best foot forward, and how to figure out what is a good fit university for you. These are some of our services. Sessions like this, in-house sessions at our offices, free workshops. We have a resource library in every center. And the biggest one, one-on-one advising. That is completely free of charge. Essentially, we are doing what agents do. They charge a ton of money. We are completely free. All our services are free of cost. These are the 5 steps to US education. It doesn't matter where on this horizontal trajectory you are. You could be, excuse me, sorry. You could be applying for your visa, or you could be just starting out. Just reach out to us. For those of you who are in Lahore, you know it's allergy season. So, excuse me. This is our website. This is where you sign up. And if you have any questions, please reach out to the office closest to you. And with that, Kat, I'm handing it over to you. I'm so sorry for my coughing fit.
No worries. Don't worry. If I have my own coughing fit, it's because of allergy season here in DC as well. Okay, so let me share my screen and then we can get started. Okay, so good evening, everybody. Thank you for logging on at the end of your day to sit and listen to me talk about tonight's topic, which is identifying and applying to graduate programs in the United States. My name is Catherine Hugins, like Aisha said. I am the Associate Director of International Partnerships and Admissions at the School of Engineering and Applied Science at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. I do work specifically with graduate STEM programs. So I will definitely be talking about GW and our engineering programs that we offer. But first, I'm going to be talking about this greater overall topic. I'm so happy to get this opportunity to speak to all of you specifically, and I appreciate you taking the time to join us. I know the beginning of your graduate school search can be a little daunting, especially if you're considering traveling halfway around the world to pursue that education. There are more than 4,000 universities across the United States, and it can be difficult to find exactly what you're looking for. So like Aisha mentioned, finding the best fit university is equally, if not more important than just finding the best university. It's all about what's actually right specifically for you. So finding the school where you'll get the best education possible in your area of interest that's really going to help you to grow and succeed, and not just finding the school that might have the best ranking or the best name recognition or the place your friends are going to. You know, those are always nice to know, but we're really trying to help you to find the schools that are going to help you personally. So I'm here to share some tips and talk to you about how to best identify those programs, what the application process actually looks like, And then, like I mentioned, I'll speak briefly about GW engineering specifically and how students in our programs actually get involved in research. So, when identifying a graduate program, the obvious thing I'm going to talk about first is that it's really to research the schools you're considering. It's not enough to just apply to schools whose names you recognize. You should be making sure they're the best fit for you. So, first, you need to actually consider what you want in an academic program. If you want to pursue a master's degree, consider what length of program you want. 1 year, 2 years, longer? Where do you want to be located? Are you the type of person who really thrives in a city environment, or do you want to be maybe somewhere smaller or more rural? Then a good tip for how to move forward is to look at the research being done in your specific field of study. Who are the experts and where are they conducting their research? Where did they get their education completed? After you've considered the academic program and the research opportunities, it's a good time to consider what, if any, work experience you hope to gain during your graduate career. If you know you want to get an internship, then make sure when you're looking at programs that you're actually checking out their career services office and actually looking at what the school offers. There are also going to be some programs that have work experience built into the curriculum where you have to do an internship to get credit to graduate. Or there might be programs that don't have that requirement, but will still offer that support and those opportunities to you outside of the classroom. Along the same lines, consider your post-graduation opportunities. Look at where graduates are eventually hired and what their average salaries are, and consider any networking or research opportunities the graduate programs are talking about. Last, this may seem like maybe a far off concern, but consider the alumni network. As international students looking at a graduate program in the US, it's good to see how widespread that alumni network is. Is it actually global? Is there a chance that you might be able to meet alumni abroad right now and talk to them in Pakistan? Are there alumni nearby who you can meet with? Those are all things that might be very helpful. So, once you've considered all of this and really narrowed down the schools that fit your needs, one of the best tips I can actually offer you is to take a hard look at the student resources that are offered. I mentioned career services before, but do your research. What other services do they provide other than the obvious? Do they offer resume building guidance and career fairs and interview prep? Will they continue to help you after you graduate, or is there a strict end date to when they're available to help you? What about professional advisors? Does the graduate program in question have staff on hand who are going to be dedicated to assisting you in your path forward? What do the student health services look like? How many libraries does the school offer? Is there a writing center or a tutoring center that you might access if needed? And last, maybe the most fun part, student organizations. If you know there's something that you're really passionate about, a hobby or sport or something, look to see if the school already has opportunities for you to make those social engagements and to make friends outside of the classroom. When I was an undergraduate student, I was really into film, so I joined a film club, which I was president for a year, which was not something I thought of ahead of time, but would have been really nice to know coming straight to campus that they had. So those are the types of things that can really set a school apart. Those resources, those opportunities, those clubs can really help you to make this community feel more like your home rather than just a school you're spending some time at. But you've considered what you want from a graduate program. You've narrowed it down to a few schools that fit your checklist after you've done all the research I've talked about. Now let's talk about the typical graduate admissions requirements. So all graduate programs will require that you fill out an application, obviously, with your biographical information and educational history and more. You'll also be asked to provide copies of your transcripts and academic records from all higher education institutions you've attended in the past. Be sure to clarify if the school you're applying to requires official documents or if they'll accept unofficial scanned copies. As international students, you should also clarify if they'll require a credential evaluation report from an external company. Some schools that's mandatory, some schools it's not. That's something that's really important to clarify during the application process. Depending on what program you're applying to, you may be required to submit test scores such as the GRE or the GMAT or the LSAT. So be sure to clarify before you apply. Is that a requirement that you're going to need to complete? EducationUSA might be able to help you to identify testing centers or anything like that if that's something that you need. As international students, you will probably be asked to submit proof of English language proficiency through TOEFL or IELTS or Duolingo, those types of test scores. So you'll also be required to make sure that you're getting that completed before the application deadline. Most applications are going to ask for a letter of recommendation. Clarify again, what types of letter of recommendations are they asking for? Some schools will accept it from anyone. Ideally, it should be from a professor or somebody who you've worked with professionally. Depending on the program, some programs explicitly want to only see academic letters. Some programs explicitly want to see a letter from from someone you worked with. Specifically, business programs might want to see something from a prior supervisor. So those are going to be things that you should be asking the admissions office during the application process to make sure that you're not submitting something they don't want. Often PhD applications require more letters of recommendation than masters. So again, if you're looking at those types, you should be making sure that you're filling out and completing everything they're asking for. And then obviously you'll typically be asked to provide a statement of purpose or a personal essay, and then a copy of your resume or CV so that the admissions office can really get a sense of you personally and your background. Now, these requirements can vary widely depending on the graduate program and the school you're applying to. So make sure that you're paying close attention to the application requirements for each program. It can even change within the school. You know, George Washington University has 14 different colleges and schools. The application requirements are not the same for all 14 colleges and schools. Some of those application requirements can change just within the school depending on the program. So making sure that you're paying attention to all of that information for the exact program you're applying to is going to be very important. Similarly, most importantly, deadlines. They are not all the same. Again, they can vary greatly at the program level. So please pay close attention to that information because some programs might have a rolling admission where they'll continue to accept applications after the priority deadline. And then some schools will have a strict, hard deadline where if you don't have everything submitted by that date, so sorry, you will have to defer your application to a future semester because they are no longer accepting. So those are the types of things that you're going to have to make sure that you're taking note of ahead of time so that you're not making minor mistakes that might harm your plans at this point. Now, some things that I wish I'd known when I was submitting my own grad school application a few years ago. An obvious one is to ask your recommenders for their letters of recommendation ahead of time. For GW's application specifically, I can tell you that as soon as you type their information into the application system, they will get an email asking for their letter. So don't do what I did, which was start my application early, not planning to submit it for a week, knowing I was going to ask my recommender in a few days because my recommender emailed me and was like, why did I just get an email from GW asking for a letter of recommendation? That was a very awkward conversation that I had to have. Don't do that. Ask them ahead of time. Please make sure that they know this is something that you're looking to do. We'll talk more about the timeline for prospective students soon, but when you're requesting your letters of recommendation, it's best to provide as much information as you can. Share the application deadline with your recommender. Um, Talk about how they'll be expected to submit the letter. If you're worried that it's been too long since you were a student of theirs or an employee, I always recommend that when you reach out, you should include a brief history of your time with them. Mention what class you took, what semester, include your grade if you remember it and it's a nice one. And if you have them saved, you can always offer to share any old papers or projects that you completed in that class. That can help them to really refresh their memory about their time with you. As for your statement of purpose and your resume or CV, these are documents that will really allow you to highlight your specific goals and history and skill sets. For your resume or CV, one thing I like to share with you is to make sure to highlight any research you've done or publications to your name. You know, work you've done outside of the classroom, any projects. Those are things that admissions officers and faculty love to see. So make sure it's obvious on your resume. Don't bury it in bullet points where it might be overlooked. Similarly, In the United States, especially a resume for a graduate student, it should typically only be 1 to 2 pages, maybe, you know, unless you're applying for a PhD program and you have dozens of publications to your name. We're not looking for a 5-page CV or something. We're looking for something very concise and clear that our faculty can look at and understand your history very clearly. So being concise is going to be very important to help you. For the statement of purpose, this is where you can talk about why you've chosen this program specifically to apply to. Um, a great way to format the statement of purpose, if it's open and there's no specific question you have to answer and you're staring at a blank page and don't know how to start, is to frame it around the past, present, and future narrative. So start off your statement of purpose by talking about your undergraduate studies and any related research you've done that's not already listed on your transcript and resume. Then talk about what you're presently doing. Why are you thinking about grad school at this point in your life? And then finish off by talking about the future and how this program specifically will fit into your goals. So, are there faculty that you want to work with? Is there specific coursework that you want to do? Do we have a lab that you're very passionate about? Those are the types of things that will help us to know that you've really done your research and been thoughtful in your consideration about why you're applying to any specific program. And then that's a nice little way of formatting that resume, at least for your first draft. And then maybe you get inspired and can keep working on it after that. Last tip is application fee waivers. If you're considering applying to several graduate programs, it can start to get a little pricey, but schools will often offer application fee waivers for attending online information sessions or other opportunities. If you can't readily find a fee waiver, feel free to email the admissions office directly and ask if they offer one and how to qualify. Sometimes it might be as simple as having a one-on-one meeting with an admissions officer. Those are all real simple things to do. But now we're going to talk about what the timeline for applying to grad schools looks like if you're a student interested in starting your studies in fall 2025. So let's talk about the process you've already started. You guys are a little ahead of schedule since it's spring 2024. Typically, we talk about this process starting in the fall of 2024 is really when you should start identifying the specific programs you want to apply for. Attending this info session, like I said, means you're ahead of the game. We love to see that. Um, some other things you should get started on is registering for and taking any tests required for the applications, reaching out to your references, like I mentioned, so that they can start working on those letters of recommendation. This is also a good time to start drafting your statement of purpose and editing and refining your resume and CV. Because beginning in spring 2025, maybe December 2024, is when a lot of deadlines are set. So that's when you should be completing and submitting your actual applications. As a reminder, these deadlines can vary greatly by program, so make sure you're keeping track of when everything is due for each program you're applying to. And then this is the part I know everyone loves, waiting. Once you actually submit your application, it can take a little time to get a response back, especially fall application cycles are usually very busy. And it's not unusual for admissions offices to take upwards of 8 weeks to get a decision back to you. So you might be waiting until March or April before you actually get a decision. But once you have, you'll typically receive your admissions and final decision at the same time. We would strongly recommend that you register for any admitted student events or webinars that your university is hosting at this point in the spring so that you can really finalize your decision and figure out what's going to be the right fit for you. Because around May 2025 is when you have to officially accept your admissions offer. This is when you should start submitting paperwork for your visa documents to get your Form I-20 or DS 2019. This is when you should be considering the official transcript policies. Once you receive those immigration documents, you should be scheduling your visa interview at your local US embassy or consulate. Your local EducationUSA center can be a big help during this time. So I would strongly encourage that you keep in touch with their office. You should schedule an appointment with your advisor at your campus and register for classes, familiarize yourself with university resources, because come August, is when you'll be arriving on campus and attending orientation activities and really getting started in your graduate program, because then you become one of our students and we love to see that happen. Now, another aspect of identifying a grad program that I haven't really touched on until now is the aspect of funding your graduate studies. So when you're identifying which program to apply to, you should really be considering the types of funding opportunities that the school provides. Consider if they offer merit-based scholarships or need-based scholarships. Do you have to opt in to be evaluated or considered for one? Do they offer any other scholarships or grants that you might qualify for? Do they offer research and teaching assistantships? Is there a separate application for those need-based scholarships or things that they might offer? When can you start working on campus? Those are all things that can be really helpful to know ahead of time when you're considering which programs are going to be a good fit for you. So this is when I'm going to switch awkwardly over to talking about GW. So let's talk about what GW offers in terms of funding at the School of Engineering. So in terms of that, we offer merit-based scholarships at the graduate level, so master's programs. That means that we offer typically a range, 25%, 50%. In very, very rare cases, our highest scholarship is 75%. That reduces the cost of your tuition. That is the only type of scholarship we offer at the master's level, and it's offered directly by my office, the Office of Graduate Admissions. Our doctoral students typically see full funding through a teaching assistantship or research assistantship where the faculty will review your application specifically and make that offer directly from their office. But there's, of course, students who are funded externally. We have Fulbright awardees who attend GW, students who are sponsored by their government or military, not to mention students who are attending GW through their own employee benefits. There's certainly other information on my website that you can take a look at. The one thing I would note is that for all of our funding opportunities that our university offers at the point of admission, there's no separate application. In our application, there is a question that asks if you want to be considered for funding. And so long as you say yes, we will review you for that funding and you will get a funding decision in your admissions letter. But let's transition a little bit and talk about GW more broadly. So GW was founded in 1821 by an act of Congress. We're obviously named after our first American president, George Washington. But something I really love was that the idea of this university was actually something that George Washington himself was very passionate and wanted. In his lifetime, he wanted to open a university in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., because he thought a higher education institute was important to have a functioning government and to have a functioning society. Um, Unfortunately, he wasn't able to see that realized in his lifetime, but he did leave his wish in his will with money set aside, which was eventually used to have the founding. So we're very proud of that history. We just hit our bicentennial a few years ago, so we're over 200 years old now. Um, and we've grown in that time. So there are around 25,000 total students studying at GW. We are unique in that actually the majority of our students are at the graduate MS and PhD level because we have about 10,000 bachelor students and 15,000 students studying at the master's and PhD. GW is made up of 3 campuses around the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area. The main campus and the one that's home to the majority of our programs is in the Foggy Bottom neighborhood, which is about 2 blocks away from the Department of State, so we're neighbors. We're also nearby to the White House and the World Bank and the IMF and the National Mall, so it's really easy to get around campus. We have research facilities located in Virginia, which is about a 30-minute bus ride that our campus offers through shuttles. And then we have the Mount Vernon campus, which is a smaller residential campus with some athletic fields in the Georgetown neighborhood. That's about a 10-minute bus ride. It's very easy to get around DC. We have the metro system with a metro stop literally across the street from the Science and Engineering Hall that my programs are offered in. So as students, the metro can be a great way to get to and from your apartment and campus, to and from your home and your internship, to and from any fun things you want to do in the DMV area. We do have about 2,500 faculty spread across our 3 campuses at GW. And as I already mentioned, along with the School of Engineering, GW has 14 colleges and schools, including the Columbian College of Arts and Sciences, the School of Business, the School of Medicine and Health Sciences, the Milken Public School of Public Health, and many more. But as I've mentioned, I work specifically for the School of Engineering. So let me speak to you a little bit more about that. GW Engineering is one of the leading research institutions in the United States, and we have more than 80 tenured and tenure track faculty members. We offer a breadth of expertise in engineering and computer science disciplines and offer bachelor's, master's, graduate certificates, and doctoral programs in 6 academic departments, which are, if I can remember them off the top of my head, biomedical engineering, civil and environmental engineering, computer science, electrical and computer engineering, engineering management and systems engineering, and mechanical and aerospace engineering. We have, and within just the School of Engineering, we've spent over $32 million in research spending in the past year. So we're very, very involved in research and in all of that work. Here you can see actually a list of our master's and PhD programs that we offer at GW Engineering. Unless it specifies master's only, or online only, these programs are offered at both the master's and PhD level. So for example, cybersecurity and computer science is a master's only program, but computer science we offer at both the master's and the PhD level. We do not offer combined programs, which is something to note, just in the sense that if you want to get a PhD, you would need to decide if you want to also get an MS, and you would have to apply for that MS first and then eventually apply for a PhD. You cannot get an MS along the way at GW. Our programs are at the master's level, typically 2 years in length. So remember how at the beginning I said you should consider what length of program you're interested in? All of ours are 2 years. Some students can maybe finish in a year and a half, depending on summer availability, but typically 2 years is what we identify. The master's programs will take 4 to 6 years in length. That's going to depend on whether or not you're entering with a prior master's or not. But typically students are finishing in about 5 years. Now, I mentioned earlier that when you're considering a graduate program, you should look at research. So I wanted to touch on how students at GW specifically participate in research. We provide broad level support for student research, and we have students and collaborators at all levels take place in research programs. That means we have high school students who visit our campus and do research, as well as undergraduate, master's, doctoral, and postdoc students. Our undergraduate students are able to do research through independent study or by completing a senior capstone project in an area of interest, while our Master's of Science students have the option to pursue a thesis or non-thesis degree program. If a student wants to conduct a master's thesis, then they have 2 semesters to do that research, or they can also do an independent study course. Our doctoral students are often graduate research assistants or graduate teaching assistants who work directly with faculty on their research. And then, of course, our PhD students do have to complete a doctoral dissertation, which can take anywhere from 3 to 5 years. But how do our students actually connect with these research projects? At GW, students are assigned an academic or faculty advisor who guides them through their course of study. And at the School of Engineering specifically, they're also assigned a professional advisor who assists in all the technical details of being a graduate student. Your faculty advisor can help students to identify which professors might be doing research in an area of interest to you, but you're also free to approach any faculty to work on research projects you're interested in based on their openings. Doing well in class can always make you stand out to a faculty member and really develop that bond. So personally, I can say I did my master's at GW, not the School of Engineering. I did it in the School of Education. But I took a class on international education and public policy. I very much enjoyed it. I did very well in the class. And about 6 months after the class ended, my professor reached out to me, asked to get coffee to catch up. I didn't think anything of it. We met up. And in the course of the meeting, he mentioned that the reason he had reached out to me was because he was starting a new research project that was related to what my final paper was on in his class. And he remembered how good of a student I was and how passionate I was about the topic I'd written on, and he invited me to work with him on that research project. So I actually helped him to compile his database that he ended up writing his paper on, and I was able to assist in getting a shorter paper published. So now I get all the fun emails where they're like, your paper was cited in someone else's work. And I get to list that on my resume. And it was a wonderful experience that really came about just by being a good student and engaging with this professor in his personal office hours. So it does happen, I promise. If that's something that you're interested in doing, you will have those opportunities so long as you seek them out. But just to share a little bit specifically about the collaborators at GW Engineering, we do offer a wide variety of research projects and collaborations, and some of these examples can include working under a National Science Foundation career grant. Our Dr. Parmer in the CS department studies how to make computer operating systems essentially self-repairing. Um, Dr. Shane Farmer in our EMSE department works with NASA to develop new R&D evaluation metrics to identify institutional levers to encourage innovation. Dr. Bardet and Dr. Bellaris from our MAE department use GW's earthquake simulator for a Department of Energy project to actually simulate the fluid flow in a nuclear reactor in order to understand and refine the safety limits of a reactor. And then my personal favorite project, the one that I have the best ability to conceptualize in my brain, is actually Dr. Lowe in our BME department that works with the National Gallery of Art to digitally peel back the layers of paint on some of the world's great artworks to look beneath the surface to help better understand and conserve these masterpieces. So those are just a handful of the different types of projects that are happening between GW engineering faculty and collaborators located in the DC area, and why our location, I think, is a really unique opportunity for students who are looking to engage in engineering and all those that it has to offer. If you do want to pursue research in your graduate program, it's important that the institution you study at has a research environment and the facilities for you to conduct that research. GW Engineering is based in the Science and Engineering Hall, and we house our research labs as well as the core facilities, informal study areas for students, along with all of our faculty offices. We're right across the street from Gelman Library, which is the main library on campus. And we also have an additional building on campus called Tompkins Hall that has some high performance computing facilities, along with some of our MAE spaces. Not to mention, as I mentioned earlier, we have the Virginia Science and Technology campus in Virginia. That's home to some additional research facilities. Now, the SEH epitomizes GW's investment in research infrastructure and facilities that enables our innovative research and teaching. The SEH is home to all of our engineering and CS programs, and it is one of the largest teaching facilities in the city of DC. Along with being LEED Gold certified, the building has a Class 100 nanofabrication clean room, a high bay with a strong wall and strong floor, as well as some high-resolution imaging suites. The Science and Engineering Hall promotes interdisciplinary research and collaboration with all of the hard science fields on campus, with the School of Medicine, the School of Public Health, and CCAS having lab spaces in the upper floors of the building. If you choose to come to GW Engineering, the SEH will be your home base as a graduate student in DC. I recommend you visit our website to do our virtual reality tour if you get a chance, so that you can actually get a better sense of the Science and Engineering Hall. The tour actually allows you to watch research being conducted and also getting the sense of what the main campus area looks like. So it's a really great opportunity. I strongly encourage you to give it a chance if you can. Well, the other thing I would say is that I strongly encourage you to connect with one of our current graduate students. We have graduate ambassadors who are represented through the majority of our programs. So you can actually visit our website and reach out to them directly and just send them a message, and they'll be happy to respond to you. 24 to 48 hours. They're busy graduate students studying, working, doing all that fun stuff, but they'll be happy to answer any of your questions about what their admissions process look like, what it's like being in DC, how they're enjoying the program, all the things that a student can specifically talk to that maybe I don't have the relevant experience for. And then I'll just mention that we do have the W. Scott Amy Career Services Center, which provides students with career development events, workshops, and other professional services for students and alumni. These services do include career guidance with a career coach, resume building, cover letter assistance, LinkedIn profile building, job market information, If you get an offer, they will help you to negotiate your salary. They are there to be a source of support for you and a resource to help you. They are very familiar with all of our different programs and the career opportunities, and they are a wonderful place to start your search and to really work on your networking abilities. And you can check out their resources now. A lot of it is actually public on their website. It's not hidden to only students. We always encourage students to start engaging with their Career Services Center, whether you come to GW or elsewhere, in your very first semester, especially a master's program. Those programs are going to be real short, much shorter than you think. So working with the Career Services Center right away is going to help you best. And then last, briefly, as I'm sure you're aware, F1 visa seeking students are eligible to participate in CPT and OPT, with some students qualifying for the STEM OPT extension. So if you're not familiar, let me talk about it quickly. CPT is curricular practical training, and that's what allows international students to participate in an internship during their course of study, so long as the internship is related to your field of study. You have to have been in the US, enrolled in your program for at least one academic year before you qualify for a CPT. And then OPT is optional practical training. That's what allows students to remain in the United States after graduation while still on their student visa to gain work experience for at least one full year post graduation. Again, it has to be related to your field of study, but this is a really unique opportunity so that you can build your resume and get that hands-on experience. Some students in unique STEM programs qualify for the STEM OPT extension, which is basically exactly what it sounds like. It is an extension of that OPT, so it allows students in these STEM programs to actually stay in the United States for an additional 24 months beyond that 1 year. So that's a total of 36 months or 3 years of OPT, where students are on that F1 visa, still on their student visa, working in the US, gaining that experience before they ever have to talk to their employer about work sponsorship or applying to a new grad program or returning home or anything like that. What I can say is that at GW Engineering, all of our programs qualify for the STEM OPT extension. So if you were to come to GW Engineering and graduate from one of our programs, you could potentially stay in the US for up to 3 years after graduation working and getting that experience. But I know that was a lot. I talked for a good 30 minutes. But now I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have. You can always email my office at engineering@gw.edu, schedule an appointment with some from my team. But now, Aisha, I see there are a lot of questions. Well,
Thank you so much, Catherine. That was extremely helpful. And yes, we do have a bunch of questions lined up. So let's just get right into them. For students, just a quick thing. If you've asked a super specific question that we need to look into your profile to answer, you can always reach out to us later, lahore@educationusa.org. I will put this down in the chat as well. We won't get to those. And also, a lot of the questions have already been answered by Catherine throughout the presentation. So let's just move on to the other ones that have kind of been reiterated a bunch of times. Okay, to get started, Kat, one of the main questions is the GPA system in the US. So a lot of students are asking, because a lot of our universities don't have the GPA system. So should they worry about that and the grade evaluation and conversion?
yeah, that's a great question. So as I mentioned at the beginning, some schools will require that you submit an external credential evaluation and some schools won't. That's a great question to ask the admissions office when you're looking at a specific school and considering applying. For GW engineering grad programs, what I can say is we do not require an external evaluation. We have credential evaluation experts who have been in the field for a lengthy amount of time doing this work, and they can evaluate a Pakistani transcript without having you submit additional work. Of course, if you're curious if you're eligible, if you're worried that maybe your grades aren't meeting what the 4.0 grade scale that the university is listing, you can always reach out to the admissions office. They might be willing to give a cursory glance at your transcript and let you know yes or no. What I will say is typically in my experience, we won't tell a student if they ask no, your GPA doesn't reach our minimum, don't apply, because we do what's known as a holistic review. We're really looking at all of your information. So while we have recommended GPA requirements, we've certainly accepted students who fall below it who have strong profiles otherwise. But what we can tell you is potentially if your prior study isn't eligible. So if potentially you haven't completed the equivalent of a 4-year bachelor's degree in the US, we can tell you beforehand whether or not you can apply. So if you have any questions like that, please reach out to the admissions office. It's going to be unique for each program you apply to. So I can't give a blanket answer, but hopefully that's eased your concerns a little bit.
Thank you. That was helpful. Another question. This is kind of about the timeline that you went over. So one of the questions about that is, it is too late to apply for fall 2024, right? And secondly, what, in your opinion, is the best time to start, like actively start applying for fall 2025?
Yeah. Okay, so that's going to be a twofold answer that is, again, dependent on the program. So let me speak about GW Engineering specifically. For GW Engineering at the master's level, you are still welcome to submit an application if you want. We are still accepting those applications. We are still considering students for admission. What I will say is our fall priority deadline is January 15th, and that's also our funding priority deadline. So if you were to apply to today, you could be admitted. It would be highly unlikely that you would receive a funding offer at this point because we have made the majority of our funding offers already. The initial admissions decision deadline for students was April 15th, so we've already had a good majority of students accept their offer. But if you're not worried about funding, if you're feeling very confident and you just want to get an admissions decision, we will still accept master's applications. PhD, very different. PhD is, like I mentioned at the beginning, we have strict deadlines. If you did not apply by January 15th, we are no longer considering your application unless you really have a faculty member who's going to bat for you and asking that we make an exception. So that can look very different. Some schools truly do have rolling basis and they'll continue to accept applications. They'll continue to do funding offers. That's something you would ask the admissions office specifically. Some schools also have different timelines, different deadlines, different start times. I've traveled with a school before where their classes actually don't start until the end of September. Our program starts at the end of August. So that's a big month where things can alter how and when we're willing to accept documents. So that's the answer for GW Engineering. And then for fall 2025, our deadlines never change. So January 15th is always our fall deadline. September 1st is always our spring deadline. So if you want to start classes in January, that's certainly something we allow you to do. Some schools don't offer that. But in terms of when you should start, like I said, doing work on your application a few months ahead of time, starting to work on that resume, CV, statement of purpose, reaching out to your recommenders, doing tests in the months before you want to apply, important. But for our purposes at GW Engineering, there's no benefit to submitting an application early in the sense that we do not start reviewing applications until the deadline is passed. So you could apply today for spring 2025. We will not look at your application until after September 1st.
Okay, that's good to know. All right. Speaking of funding, you mentioned the tuition waiver scholarships. A question is, does GWU offer assistantships for master's students, or are those just for doctoral?
At the point of admissions, assistantships are reserved for doctoral students. That doesn't mean master's students can't get an assistantship. It just means that it wouldn't typically happen until you've been in the program for a semester or a year, you've developed a relationship with the faculty, they invite you to apply for an opening in their lab or to be their TA, they ask you to maybe, if you have the free time for that. But that's something that would come directly from the department. It's unfortunately, we don't have a central office that offers our assistantships. It really is independent on the specific department you're enrolled in. You don't have to do an assistantship within your department. You could potentially work with the faculty outside of it. But those are going to be individual conversations that you would have once you're actually on campus. And like I said, it's not impossible. It does happen. I always encourage students who are interested in assistantships about being vocal about it. Don't pester the faculty, don't annoy them. That's not a good way to make an impression, but once you're on campus, go to office hours, talk about their research, let them know, especially if you're interested in the same research, that you're passionate about it and you'd like them to keep you in mind for any future opportunities.
Oh, great. All right. Another question is, let me just open the list again. Yeah. What are your top tips for students who get an interview in the application? Are there interviews? Does GW do any interviews? And if so, what are your tips for that?
Yeah, I don't really have tips for it, mainly because we don't actually do
Oh,
interviews at
okay.
GW Engineering, especially at the master's level. That's not something that we're going to offer. Doctoral candidates sometimes might be invited to do an interview if my faculty are very interested and keen and they want to know more. There's something that they're not seeing in the application. But what I would say in that case is that I'm not involved in the doctoral review. We really, my office is there to consolidate your application, make sure we have all of the materials, and then we forward it on to the department, and they're the ones who do all of the application reviews for PhDs. Um, I have traveled with schools before. I have colleagues who work at other universities that do require interviews. And what I would say is that this is really your opportunity to make yourself, known. This is so I would say don't be too formal that they come out of it being like, I don't know anything about that student, but also don't be too casual. This is still an academic review process. Don't talk about the wild party you went to last night or the illegal thing you did with friends 6 months ago. Consider the context of who you're talking to. Um, and just the other thing I would say, like all of your application materials, is that anytime you're getting to submit something new, you should be providing new content, new context, right? You don't want to be regurgitating information that they already have. So in your interview, you don't need to harp on your transcript or your grades or your CGPA. You don't need to talk explicitly about every single thing you've done. They have your resume, they have your transcript, they've already seen that information. So this is really your opportunity to provide new information that they can't glean from other aspects of your application.
Sense. Thank you. Another question is, do you have grad student housing at GWU?
Yeah, so GW does not offer on-campus graduate housing. We do have an office of off-graduate housing that can help students to begin their search, to connect with other students who are looking for roommates, to find verified, places to search for housing so that you're not getting tripped up by unfortunately unkind people. What I would always say is, use your brain. If you're seeing a $200 apartment in Georgetown, no, you're not. That's not real. But the Office of Off-Campus Housing is there to be a resource for you. We do greatly benefit from our location. We have students who live in DC proper, who live in Maryland, who live in Northern Virginia, and that DC metro system really does allow people to commute easily to campus. I live in Northern Virginia in Arlington. It's right across the river from DC. And I take a 10-minute metro ride, and then I'm right on campus when I want to go to the office. So super easy. And also, as students qualify for something called UPass, which allows you to pay a $100 fee every semester, and then you can ride the metro for free as many times as you want. I wish they gave that to staff. They don't. It's, I'm jealous.
That's really great. That's a great deal. Um, okay, another question. Is there funding available for the spring intake?
Yeah, so at GW Engineering, like I said, we have fall and spring intake. We do offer scholarships for the spring. That's perfectly fine. Again, priority deadline if you want to be considered for spring, that's going to be September 1st. The one thing I would note about spring intake for international students especially is that it's just a shorter turnaround time. You apply by September, you probably don't get an admissions decision until October. We start issuing I-20s in October. We stop issuing them in November. It's a very brief amount of time to get your documents in and then apply for your F1 visa. If you can do it, great. We definitely have students who can and who do come. The one benefit of fall, of course, is that it's just a longer amount of time to go through the visa process if that's something you're worried about. For fall, January 15th is the deadline to apply. We don't start issuing I-20s until February or March. And then students really do have, March until August to get that visa. So it just allows you more time. Those are the considerations. What I would say is we do allow students to defer their admission up to 1 full year. So if you applied for spring and were admitted and got your I-20, but for whatever reason weren't able to schedule a visa appointment, you were put in administrative processing, you got sick, something happened with your family, we do allow you to defer your admission. So you could defer from spring to fall or from spring to spring the next year. That's okay. If you did receive a funding decision, if you're deferring to the same academic year, that's fine. Your funding will remain the same. If you're deferring to a new academic year, you will have to be reconsidered for funding. So what that means is that a fall student who defers to spring, their funding will remain the same, but a fall or spring student deferring to the next fall will have to be reconsidered. Just because it's a new academic year, our funding changes every year. It's a fun thing. We can always confirm that with you. If you are considering deferring, we'll let you know what the situation looks like for you.
Okay, thank you. The visa thing is a huge consideration for us here in Pakistan, so it's good to know that there is the deferral option. We have students that are put in AP all the time, so again, super helpful. We just have time for a couple of quick questions. Okay, so there's a bit of confusion about this in the chat box. Students want to know, for PhD, do they have to contact a PhD supervisor beforehand, or do they just apply directly to the through the admissions department?
Yeah, I can understand why they would be confused because it's one of those things that, again, varies greatly. Some schools strictly want you to reach out to faculty first. They want you to have that relationship before you submit an application. Some don't. GW Engineering does not. Our
Okay.
faculty are very busy. They are teaching classes. They are doing research. Some of them are working in the field. They cannot manage the review process of vetting candidates before they actually apply. So you are allowed to apply without ever having spoken to a faculty. That's perfectly okay. In your application, you will be required to identify about 3 to 5 faculty members who you ideally want to work with. So you do have to do your research. You do have to look at our websites to figure out which faculty are doing research in the areas you're interested in, but you do not have to reach out to them beforehand. You certainly can. You're welcome to send an email. Their addresses are available online. I would just say, if you don't get a response, don't be discouraged. I struggle to get a response from my faculty sometimes. They're just busy. That's perfectly okay. So when you apply, we send your application to the faculty for review. Their whole committee will meet and they'll do the review process. And if you are admitted, it will be because a faculty member has gone, I'm really interested in what they're doing. I want to work with this student. I'm going to take them on, and that's okay.
All right, thank you. And this just like to all the students who are here right now, honestly, just read what the university website, department website says. I mean, I've had students where professors like write in their bio, do not contact us. And students will keep emailing them repeatedly. So if you can't read like, simple instructions on the website, they're going to be high, like they won't take you on as a doctoral student. So please do your research before you contact the professors, or just read the instructions on the websites. Okay, Kat, I think we have time for one more question. This one also has been asked repeatedly. It is about the language requirements. By and large, do you think the Duolingo is being accepted for grad programs and specifically at GWU? And is a language proficiency test always required, even for students whose entire degree has been in English and they're in an English speaking country? Like Pakistan, one of our official languages is English. And a lot of our universities, the entire course load is in English as well.
Yeah, so what I can say is that for GW, GW Engineering specifically, we do accept Duolingo. Duolingo is still new enough that it's going to be one of those cases where you're going to have to look specifically at the school and whether or not they're accepting it. It's a case-by-case basis. For GW right now, we are still technically in a piloting phase of accepting Duolingo. but we are accepting it. That's fine. So I just can't comment on what other schools are doing. But you can, again, always reach out to the admissions office. In terms of the requirements for English language policies, again, it's going to vary by school. For GW University, we do require that students submit English language test scores unless they've attended higher education in a country where English is the only official language. So Pakistan, where it is one of the official languages, unfortunately would not qualify. Obviously, if your entire education has been in English, you're speaking it fluently, you're going to do great. It's going to be fine. It's just going to be an annoying thing that you need to complete. But if you're a student who maybe did your bachelor's degree abroad and you've already studied in the US, or you did your degree in Australia or something, it's possible that we might be able to waive it. It's based not on your nationality or anything of that sort. It's based on where you conducted your prior degrees. And just to be clear, I can tell you I have American students who like got their bachelor's in Germany, and then they're like, why do I have to submit an English language test score? And I'm like, our policy is where you went to school. That's what it's about. So this policy frustrates a lot of people, not just you.
That makes sense. Okay, I'm just going to get a tiny question in just because it's been asked so many times. Last one, Kat, about the fee waiver. Is it okay for students to ask you about a fee waiver on this email address that's given?
You don't need to ask because I was going to offer it at the end of this.
Okay.
For
Wow.
for attending this webinar, you guys can use the fee waiver EducationUSA Pakistan 2024. I just sent it in the webinar chat, so you should all be able to access that. Please, you've attended today's session. There are about 60 of you here. Don't share that with all of your friends because I can see that it's 60 of you. If I suddenly get 400 app fee waivers, we will have to stop accepting it. But for attending today's session, you can certainly use that fee waiver code and submit an application.
That's great. Thank you so much. This is super, super helpful. Yep, the thank yous are already streaming in. And that is all the time we have today. Once again, Catherine, thank you so much. This was highly helpful. And we really hope to have you again if you have time sometime in the future.
Always. I love doing webinars for EducationUSA.
Perfect. Thank you. So everyone, thank you. Once again, any questions, reach out to us at Lahore. And with that, we will say goodbye. Have a good evening, and Kat, have a great day ahead of you.
Yeah, just real quick, I saw someone ask a question. Yes, the fee waiver is only for the School of Engineering graduate programs. I can't guarantee that if you tried to submit it to the School of Business that they would accept it. Just for us.
Thank you for that clarification.
Well,
All
thank
right.
you guys so much for joining and listening on your Friday evening. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.